chill. Oh, Governor Martin had a plan that gave the folks a thrill, yeah. Ooh. He said, rise up for the crown, let's take the rebels down. But neighbors fighting, neighbors turn the whole place upside down. Cause the king was stirring trouble, turning friends into foes. And the folks began to wonder how far this thing would go. He has excited insurrections, that's what Jefferson would write. When the king turned Carolinas on each other in the night. But at Most Creek Bridge, the Patriots stood with old Mother Covington firing good. And that's the day the people learned to speak freedom rang at Most Creek.
Renewal by Anderson, this hour's sponsor of the program. Nice to have you with us for hour 3 of a Tuesday morning. It's the 24th of February, 2026. Dave Bowman is with us, and it is Dave Does History in this hour. Before we go there, thanks to Rod Cook, Dave's co-host on What the Frock, who joined us in hour number 2. If you missed it, pick it up in the podcast section, top of the page there at BillMick.com when you get an opportunity as your day progresses. Fun having Rod along, and nice to have him in, the real time zone as opposed to the one you all live in somewhere up in the future.
Wow.
Yeah.
You mean the past.
That one too. Yeah.
Oh, well. Yeah, it's good to see Rod, and glad he's able to get down to Georgia, visit some family and some of our loyal listeners down there.
Grandkids were cute and having fun with Grandpa, which was nice.
Yep.
Anyway, Dave, where are we going today? You said old Mother Covington is the theme here?
It's the last grievance in the Declaration. Not that we're at the last. I've kind of jumped around a little bit, but it's the last one listed, and it starts with these words: he has excited domestic insurrections among us. Now, we often imagine the American Revolutionary War and the American Revolution as American patriots versus the Redcoats. But reality on the ground is much different. The state that has actually the most battles during the Revolutionary War is not Massachusetts, it's not New York, it's not even Virginia. It's actually the Carolinas, South Carolina, and it is almost exclusively Patriot versus Loyalist militias. It is vicious.
Colonial.
Yes. It
Wow.
is vicious. It is incredibly devastating. And it is just brutal by every standard of warfare, whether you're talking modern or even ancient. This idea of these loyalists who are willing to fight against the patriot cause is particularly prevalent in the southern colonies. Now, there are some anthropological reasons for that I don't have time to get into, but what you need to understand in general is that after the English Civil War, many of the supporters of the crown moved to the southern United States, or the southern colonies. In fact, to this day, the state of Virginia refers to their collegiate University of Virginia as the Cavaliers. The Cavaliers were, of course, the loyal troops to the crown back in England. There is the Old Dominion University. There's this very loyalist element to the southern colonies that is not necessarily present in the North. There's another factor here. We've talked about this before. Remember when Franklin and Adams scratched out that word Scots in one of the he's transporting large armies of Scots and they crossed that out. There are thousands of Scottish immigrants in the southern colonies, particularly in North Carolina. North Carolina is the 4th largest colony at this point, and it is filled with Scottish people who moved to North Carolina. Including amongst them is one particular woman who has gained fame because she is the woman who helped Bonnie Prince Charles escape from the Battle of Culloden. The Scots were defeated by the English crown, and they have basically sworn loyalty to the crown. And even though they've moved to North Carolina, they are very loyal to the British crown. and they are very populist in North Carolina and to a lesser degree South Carolina. And it's kind of that mindset that the Scottish immigrant is in fact not American, not willing to fight for the Patriot cause that caused Jefferson to write that originally in the Declaration before it was erased. But now he writes those words. He has excited domestic insurrections above us. And again, we think of it as Patriot Continental Army versus the Redcoats, but it really is so much more than that. By late 1775, the last royal governor of North Carolina is a fellow by the name of Josiah Martin, which is one of those names that sounds vaguely familiar to us, but it really isn't. He has literally been chased out of his capital in New Bern, which is in North Carolina, and he is living in exile aboard a British warship known as the Cruiser, which is off the coast of Wilmington, Cape Fear, that area there. He has decided that of all the governors, the royal governors in the New World, he's the one that can save this for the king. He can save this whole thing. And he writes page after page of letters to Parliament, to the king, to the king's advisors, saying, hey, here's what I need. I need 7,000 troops from England. I need a couple thousand troops from New York. And I can raise an army of 10,000 loyalist subjects who just happen to be Scottish. Combined with your British force of 7,000, we can smash the rebellion here in North Carolina, and then we will march north and crush Virginia, and we'll hook up with General Howe in New York, and this whole thing will be over and done.
And we see how it goes in 60 seconds on WMMB. Having the advantage, Dave, of looking back on this from a 250-year-old perspective, it sounds to me like Josiah Martin was writing a check his hiney couldn't cash.
Well, yes, he is.
Okay.
He is writing a check. On paper, it sounds great. In fact, when Lord Germain reads it in November of 75, he's like, yeah, this is a great idea. He actually convinces the king, King George, he talks to the king about it. The king actually writes, any measure that crushes the American patriot cause is okay by me. And so he basically signs off on this idea that they're going to form this whole army. They're going to sail 7,000 troops across the Atlantic Ocean in the dead of winter to Wilmington.
Before that's a problem.
Yes. We're going to sail all these people to Cape Fear, which, by the way, is known for being not necessarily friendly to shipping.
I was going to go with treacherous, but okay.
Right. And then we're going to march these people across North Carolina and into Virginia and up north. It sounds great on paper, but there's some problems with this. Now, Martin's plan, like you said, 10,000 loyalists, mostly Scottish, are recent immigrants into the Cape Fear region. They hold land grants from the king himself, and they have sworn oaths of loyalty to the king. Now, again, many of these are Scots who were defeated, and after the Battle of Culloden, they immigrated to what will become the United States. Amongst them is the woman who actually hid Bonnie Prince Charles and allowed him to escape. Flora MacDonald is actually one of these people that's come to America. That's the vast majority of these 10,000 troops that Martin is going to raise. Also among them, Bill, and this is kind of an interesting thing, are a group of people known as the Regulators. Now, the Regulators are actually rebels. They don't like the English crown at all. But the thing they hate more than the English crown are Massachusetts patriot elites. They don't like them at all.
Odd.
Yes, it's very, well, these are country folk, country mice, and those are city mice, right? And they
okay, now I understand it better. Yes.
They just don't get along. And so they're actually recruited by Governor Martin to fight against the rebels. They don't like Governor Martin. They don't like the king. But, hey, they're better than those John Adams, Thomas Jefferson patriot elites that we really don't like.
That's interesting.
Sometimes there's just no explaining things, folks. I mean,
the enemy of my enemy.
Me is my friend, I guess.
Yeah.
Jefferson notes that by pitting colonialists against colonialists, loyalist versus patriot, the king is inciting the domestic insurrection. But it actually goes beyond that. The king and Governor Martin have promised these loyalists more land, which of course they're going to take from patriots, and he's promising them tax exemptions for taking up arms for the king. And through that, Jefferson writes, Martin is actually manufacturing a civil war. Now, on the surface of this is already a civil war, but now he's pitting colonist against colonist, a domestic insurrection, if you will. And this is a problem because now you've got brother against brother, in a way. In some cases, father versus son. Ben Franklin famously will separate from his son, who remains a loyalist. He's actually the royal governor of New Jersey, and they will literally never speak again. As part of this whole mobilization, Martin issues commissions to lead this conflict. He hires a guy by the name of Donald MacDonald, who is a Scottish officer in the Royal Army who had fought at Bunker Hill, and Donald MacLeod. They will lead this internal army, and he brings them to North Carolina, where, of course, they're immediately suspected of being loyalists. And at Cross Creek, which is what modern-day Fayetteville is, they begin to wait for their 10,000 Scottish troops to show up. And then they're going to march across the coast to meet the British fleet, which is sailing from England. And then they will put an end to the American Rebellion.
Or so I think. Maybe he got Ronald McDonald instead of Donald, and that's why it went south, or north, as the case may be. Back with Dave Does History in moments. Stay with us.
It's a take on history you won't find anywhere else. Dave Does History on Bill Mick Live.
Renewal by Anderson, this hour's sponsor of the show. Glad you're with us here on Bill Mick Live. Dave is taking us to old Mother Covington eventually. We've got loyalists out of the Carolinas. Dave, under the leadership of Donald MacDonald and Donald MacLeod, going to meet up with Brits, and they're going to take care of these little snot patriots in the northern part of the country. Tell me what's happening now.
Well, first things first, they got to get rid of the rebels in North Carolina, or as I've heard it called, North Kakalaki. At any rate, when MacLeod and MacDonald get to Cross Creek, which is modern-day Fayetteville, they are greeted by great suspicion. They're seen as, wait, you're a British officer. What are you doing here? And, of course, there are no secrets in the American Revolution, so it becomes pretty clear that they're there to recruit or lead a recruited army against the Patriots and the rebels. So they're expecting 10,000 of these Scots to show up, these Scots and regulators. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on which side of this you're on, only about 1,600 actually show up. Of those 1,600, only about half even have firearms. What they do all have, though, because they're Scots, are claymores. They have the swords, the broadswords. But they don't have any guns to speak of. MacDonald, who is, as I said, a veteran of Bunker Hill, he's kind of nervous about this. The only thing they've got going for them is that once they get to the coast at Cape Fear, there's going to be 7,000 British troops waiting for them, and we can get on with it then. But, of course, the Patriots now know about this, and a cat and mouse game begins because, I don't know if you've ever been to North Carolina, but the eastern side of North Carolina is pretty swampy. So we've got to get from Fayetteville, what will become Fayetteville, to essentially Wilmington, and we've got to do this quickly to meet these British troops that are coming, both from New York, General Howe, who, by the way, is already there, and these troops that are coming from England. The problem is, again, it's swampy, there's rivers, there's bridges, and there's an entire Patriot army now, roughly the same size, in the way. And so MacDonald has to maneuver his troops because he doesn't want to have a pitched battle yet. Half his troops don't have guns. So we've got to start maneuvering around in this swamp, and we get a battle, we get a campaign of maneuver, which is, kind of unusual for this and won't really happen again until 1781. But at this point, he decides to cross Rockfish Creek. He's burning bridges to try to trap the rebels on the opposite side. And this whole thing is leading to the rebels are pulling back slowly as they're giving up space for time. And they're trying to block the rebels from getting where they're going. And eventually, the problem is, of course, eventually you're going to run out of creeks and run out of North Carolina.
So, Dave, where does this end up taking us now?
As the Patriots withdraw towards the coast and the loyalists are following along, MacDonald is getting more and more frustrated by this because, again, they're not fighting the way they're supposed to fight. They're supposed to stand up in a line and let us shoot at them. We're not going to do that, so there you go. Eventually, the Patriots reached a place called Moore's Creek Bridge. Now, again, this is very hard to describe to folks who've never been there, but this entire area is just a giant swamp, and there are very few ways across it, very few roads, very few bridges. And this bridge, Moore's Creek Bridge, is one of the few that's actually there. The Patriots get there, and they set up camp on the same side that the loyalists are on, which is a tactical mistake. In the middle of the night, they realize this, and because they get the word that MacLeod is coming and the loyalists, the Scots, are coming, and so they withdraw across the bridge onto the other side of Moore's Creek. With me here? Again, It's very dark, it's very swampy. This creek, we don't think of it as a huge creek. It's 50 feet wide, maybe. It's about 5 feet deep at this point. Deep enough that you can't cross it with a wagon. You need a bridge. And there's only one bridge. Now, the Patriot leaders get this brilliant idea. They leave the campfires burning on the other side of the bridge so that the Scots and the Loyalists will think, well, we've trapped them. At the same time, they pull up all the planks off the bridge so that all you have are the beams that run the length of it that you put the things on.
Yeah.
Then they coat those with soap and animal fat. Got it here? Got the picture here? So it's pitch dark. You got a bridge that doesn't have any planks on it. All it's got are these logs that have tallow and fat and soap all over them. And you've got this 5-foot deep creek. And they dig in on the far side. Now, the rebels have about 850 to 1,000 rebel troops. They are actually armed. They have guns. And they have 2 3-pound cannons, one of which they have named Old Mother Covington. Turns out that Mother Covington is the matriarch of one of the local families who supports the rebels. And they've named the other cannon and her daughter. So you've got Old Mother Covington and her daughter, 3-pound cannons, which are not huge, but they're big enough. You've got this choke point across the river, which you have essentially made almost impossible to cross. I mean, imagine trying to cross this in the dark. And you have the Scots coming. The Scots are still the Scots, folks. They are wearing very heavy tartan kilts. Not a smart thing for a soldier to be wearing. Certainly not a soldier that's going to try to cross a creek that's deep. They also don't have any guns. And when they get to the bridge, they realize that the camp is empty. They think that the Patriots have fled and that they've got them on the run. All they've got to do is charge across this bridge and the battle will be theirs. And then they're very close to the shore. They can meet the British troops and everything will be fine. Check, check, aye. Except that Donald McDonald, sorry, I almost called him Ronald McDonald. Donald McDonald, the leader of all this thing, really having a lot of second thoughts about this. And according to most accounts of the battle, he was ill. Air quote, air quote. Reality is he's drunk off his butt and can't even get out of bed. So McLeod has to lead the troops. He's not as good an officer. And as they approach the bridge, they pull out their broadswords, their claymores. They raise them into the air and they shout, "King George and broadswords!" And they begin to charge across the bridge, which is slick, dark, and covered by old Mother Covington and her daughter. You know how this is going to end, right?
Not well, but we'll find out when we continue in a moment on Bill Mick Live.
Call Bill now, 321-768-1240.
Renewal by Anderson bringing you this hour of the show. Of course, it's our Dave Does History Hour. Speaking of history, a little of it being made tonight. Maybe it's the State of the Union address. You'll hear it right here, starting at 9 p.m. on 92.7 FM WMMB. Dave, when we left, this conflict was beginning to happen at the bridge, but you've got Scottish Highlanders with swords going across a greased-up bridge, and it looks like the Patriots are waiting for them with the old Mother Covington and her daughter. How did it play out?
Well, I mean, about like you would predict.
Mm-hmm.
As they pull their swords and they're yelling, "King George and broadswords," they begin to charge across the bridge, and they realize about halfway across that, oh, this is, A, the bridge planks aren't here anymore, and B, what is here is greased. And people start falling into the creek. Now, again, the creek is only 5 feet deep, but when you're wearing a heavy wool kilt, along with all the accoutrements that go along with that, it causes problems. And many
How
of the
heavy are the swords?
heavy enough. I mean, you can let go of the sword, but you can't really get rid of the kilt, can you?
No, that would be a little tough.
And there are many Scots who drown because they're basically pulled under by their kilts. The Patriots open fire. Old Mother Covington and her daughter boom out. Now, these are 3-pound cannons. The average rate of fire for a cannon during that time frame is about twice a minute. But we're told by some that old Mother Covington, apparently they were well trained. They got off a lot more than just the 6 shots that the 3 minutes would have allowed. This battle only lasts 3 minutes, by the way.
Wow.
General McLeod, or Colonel McLeod, is killed. He has over 20 bullets in him as the entire wall of Patriots open fire. In the initial assault, there are 30 to 50 of the loyalists who are outright killed, including McLeod. But again, it's a narrow bridge. A lot of them can't get across there, and they're falling off of it, so that's not a big surprise. But many of those deaths are due to drowning, not necessarily being hit by old Mother Covington or the bullets. The Patriots, by the way, suffer one casualty. Only one man is killed, a guy by the name of John Grady. 3 minutes. That's all this lasts. This entire plan of Governor Martin, this grand strategy that he has had, comes down to these 3 minutes along Moores Creek Bridge in the middle of the night on February 27th, 1776. And it's a complete and utter rout of his loyalist Scottish troops. In fact, of those 1,400 that are there, another 850 will be captured by the Patriot forces. Think about that. That's almost the entire army. About, 200-300 of them actually, quote-unquote, get away. So this isn't just a defeat. This is a slobber knocking, as John Madden would have said. In any case, the British fleet doesn't arrive at Cape Fear from England until May anyway. So even if they had gotten through and gotten to Cape Fear, there was no British fleet there to meet them. General Howe was there with a couple hundred troops from New York, but but it wouldn't have helped. This whole plan has fallen apart, and Governor Martin has spent the last week before this battle writing another 11-page letter saying, I'm having second thoughts about my plan.
Good timing.
But the problem is, of course, it takes 6 to 12 weeks to get to England, and by the time it gets there and back, this thing is already over. Mm-hmm. The British troops that finally arrive, and we haven't even touched on that, Bill. We haven't even touched on the adventure of the British fleet coming from Cork, Ireland, to Cape Fear to do all this stuff. Look, this isn't about religion, but if you find yourself in a position where you have this grand strategic plan and everything you need for that plan keeps getting blown off course by weather, events, just, act of God, don't you at some point kind of say to yourself, maybe we shouldn't do this?
There's a message here. Yeah.
Yes. The British never get that message. This entire fleet thing is just an utter disaster.
They're godless heathens, Dave.
Yes.
Okay,
well, they don't think they are.
No.
It's that in and of itself would take an hour to talk about that little trip, which, by the way, one of the British officers on that voyage is a guy by the name of Cornwallis, which is how he gets to America. And his recounting of this voyage is just, to me, it's hysterical. To him, obviously, it wasn't so funny. But, at some point you kind of realize, hey, maybe this isn't such a great idea. But in any case, they show up far too late, and they figure, well, there's nothing to do here. So they sail on to Charleston, South Carolina for another deal another day. This entire battle, though, has a major political effect. Not only does Jefferson write those words. Now, remember, it's February, the end of February. In June, Jefferson is going to write these words. He has excited domestic insurrections among us. So this is fresh in the minds of Americans as they're getting ready to declare their independence. But in North Carolina, this has really touched off some things. Not only are they mad about Governor Martin, they're mad about his whole idea that he was going to bring in the Scots to try to do this. They're mad about the fact that, how dare these loyalists, these Scottish loyalists, and again, I can't emphasize this to you enough. The Scots were not liked by Americans. They were seen as British lackeys. They did not like them. And so much so that that woman, Flora MacDonald, who had helped Bonnie Prince Charles at the Battle of Culloden, is actually shipped back to Scotland. You go home. You don't even get to stay here. Where she dies in relative obscurity and poverty because she loses everything. All the loyalist land is seized. All their property is taken away from them, and these 850 prisoners are marched off to a prisoner of war camp where they spend the rest of the war going, well, we can either go back to Scotland or we can stay here in this prisoner of war camp. A lot of them do go back to Scotland. Some of them end up staying. But in North Carolina, there is a feeling that now that the king has made it clear that he is going to declare war on us and that he's going to use our own people against us, it's time to quit arguing. And this is going to lead to a convention kind of thing in North Carolina as they're getting ready to send their representatives back to the the Continental Congress. And it's North Carolina, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, that actually declares its independence first. Now, they do this twice. They did it once in 1775, the Mecklenburg Declaration. Mecklenburg County in North Carolina declared independence from England. Okay, maybe they did, maybe they didn't, depends on who you read. But this time around, on April 12th, 1776, which is why if you look at a North Carolina state flag, you'll see that date on there, April 12th, 1776. The state of North Carolina will authorize its representatives to the Continental Congress to not just vote for independence, but to push for independence. And it's North Carolina that becomes the very first state to officially say, that's it, we're done with the king. Up to this point, a lot have been talking about it, a lot have been arguing about it, a lot have been reading common sense, a lot have been saying, hey, it's a good idea, but it's North Carolina, after the Battle of Moores Creek Bridge, that says, yeah, old Mother Covington says, we're done.
So, Dave, this becomes just another plank, if you will, in the reason this country is saying, we're done. And North Carolina being first saying, we're done, and we're out no matter what anybody else does. Yeah,
pretty much. And it's interesting that it is the last of the grievances that Jefferson lists, because by June, this is going to be the freshest in Americans' minds. Remember, news travels very quickly in the colonies, and the word about this gets out very rapidly. And again, it's just one more thing for the Patriots to be upset about. The regulators who are now seen as traitors because they were rebels, but now they're not because they don't like John Adams, I guess. The bottom line is, it's more than just a military victory. It's one of those forgotten victories. Bill, I have a book that I bought. It's called America's Victories. I don't know if you can see that there or not.
Yeah, I can see that. Go ahead.
The subtitle is Lesser-Known Campaigns and Commanders That Helped Win the American Independence. The Battle of Moores Creek is not in this book.
Oh,
Lexington is.
Sure.
Bennington is. Saratoga is. But Moores Creek is not. It's like we have just completely forgotten this. And I think that's part of it, because these loyalist versus patriot battles are so misunderstood and so not looked at, because they're not, fancy armies marching in uniforms and shooting at each other from 50 yards away. But it was such a brilliant victory. The idea that we pulled that off is just amazing. And old Mother Covington and her daughter just booming in the dark.
Is this anything like an introduction of guerrilla warfare? We're not going to do this the way you guys in uniforms do.
I think a lot of it is. I think that's part of McDonald's issue with this whole thing, is that he can't get the Patriots to just stop and fight him, which he's not used to. You remember, he was a veteran of Bunker Hill, where we did do that. You'd think he'd go, well, maybe that isn't a good idea either, because even though we won that battle technically, we kind of lost in the big scheme of things. We can't afford very many wins like that. But he was drunk, so who knows? It's a fascinating thing. It's just another place on when I finally get to the East Coast that I've got to go see, because it's just amazing to me, the things that we do and how this influenced things. And Jefferson, of course, knows about this, and he writes that down. He has excited insurrections. And that's just another nail in the coffin of why we declare our independence.
Probably not a bad idea. If you can get the folks you're fighting, if you can get them to fight amongst each other, they're not as focused on you. Didn't seem to work out so well this time.
No, it didn't work out at all. In fact, most of those battles didn't work out very well.
Oh, Highland Scots with broadswords came marching through the pines. Oh, regulators followed, thinking this was their time. But Caswell lit the campfires, left the bridge all sick and bare, and waited in the shadows for the loyalists marching there. When the Highlanders came charging, shouting, King George and broadswords loud, the Patriots held steady, and the swamp swallowed the crowd. He has excited insurrection, that's what Jefferson would write, when the king turned Carolinian on each other in the night. But at Moores Creek Bridge, the Patriots stood with old Mother Covington firing good. And that's the day the people learned to speak. Freedom rang at Moores Creek. 3 minutes in the darkness, a cannon's thunder roar. Old Mother Covington boomed out, and the fight was done and o'er. No army for the British, no loyalist relief, just a battered plan for tyranny and a colony's belief. So North Carolina gathered, said, we've seen the king's design. If he'll spark a civil war, then the fault is truly mine. The Halifax resolve declared, let independence be our choice. And the words that shook the world began with Carolina's voice. 'Cause the battle proved the grievance had crossed the line, and freedom's flame was burning by the spring of '76 in time. He has excited insurrections, that's what Jefferson would write, when the king turned Carolinians on each other in the night. But at Moss Creek Bridge, the Patriots stood with old Mother Covington firing good. And that's the day the people learned to speak. Freedom reigns.